Thanks, Nomi, and thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. As Nomi said, my name is Etienne Melcher-Feldin, and I'm on the Child Nutrition team at the Food Research and Action Center. I'm joined today by another Child Nutrition team member, Clarissa Hayes, as well as Rob Shaheen, Assistant Director of Food Services for New Bedford Public Schools in Massachusetts. Today's webinar is focused on making CEP work with a low identified student percentage, or ISP. You might have joined this webinar because you're concerned your district or school's ISP is below 62.5% and won't see that 100% reimbursement of meals at the free rate. But fear not, almost 12,000 schools across the country are making CEP work with an ISP below 60%, and we will discuss strategies to help you do just that during today's webinar. But before we dive into CEP, I want to turn it over to Clarissa for a brief update on the waivers USDA has issued as of today as part of its response to COVID-19. Clarissa?
Great, thanks Etienne, and hi everybody. So I won't take up too much time, but I wanted, like Etienne mentioned, to give a quick update about what we know about waivers impacting this upcoming school year. So as you may know, if you are running the programs, over the last 4 months, USDA has announced several waivers and flexibilities for schools and community sponsors to serve meals as schools have been closed since March. So many of these flexibilities have been extended through the summer, so you may be using them for your current grab-and-go and pick-up meal sites in your communities. So what we're hearing is that many school districts will not be back in session in a traditional sense this year. So many will be doing remote learning or some hybrid of that with in-class instruction. So USDA did announce late last month, I think it was June 25th, that several of the waivers have been extended through the upcoming school year for the National School Lunch Program, School Breakfast Program, and CACFP. So those are listed here on the screen. It is a non-congregate option, which, as the name suggests, allows schools to serve meals to go, to allow families to pick up if kids will not be at school. The other one is a meal pattern flexibility. So if they're not able to meet that, there is some flexibility in getting that reimbursement. Meal service times, and then the option that allows parents and guardians to pick up without a student being present. So we are very excited about all of those and think it's a step in the right direction. But we did want to flag a couple of things for you. So as of now, these waivers do not include the options for schools and for community sponsors to do summer food or seamless summer like they were able to do when schools closed in the spring. There is also at this time no waiver of the after-school activity requirement, which is needed for CACFP supper sites. So what this means is that in order to serve suppers, they have to be served at a program and students have to be at school in person. So we are working with several of our national partners, such as the School Nutrition Association, to urge USDA to include both summer food and seamless summer as an option for this upcoming school year. And we're doing that for a couple reasons. We really believe that this is going to streamline operations for schools by taking away some of the challenges that may come with that remote and hybrid learning. So, identifying eligible children, which may result in overly identifying those that are receiving free or reduced price meals, tracking and taking payments, and then also reducing the burden on families who have to come and pick up meals from school that may be miles away from where they live. So another key part of this is also to extend the area eligibility waiver that goes along with summer food and seamless summer, which would allow schools to serve all children for free. So like I mentioned, there is the after-school activity requirement that we would also like to see waived, and then we would like to see that schools and community sponsors can serve both summer and after-school meals at the same time. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, but I would just say that we are hopeful that these current waivers will be expanded because we know that schools and community sponsors need that flexibility to meet the need during this time. So we'll keep everybody updated on the advocacy around this on our website, FRAC.org. So Etienne, I will go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Great, thanks Clarissa for that update. And as Clarissa mentioned, we'll continue to advocate for these additional waivers needed to ensure access to meals during the fall. And while we hope USDA does decide to take that approach, Clarissa mentioned we also need to plan with what we know and have available, and are encouraging school districts to take a fresh look at community eligibility for the upcoming school year and see if it's a financially viable option. We hope that the election extension deadline to August 31st, included in the waivers, provides more time for school districts to build the support needed to adopt, especially those with a lower ISP. I believe that most of you on today's webinar know the basics of community eligibility and are now just trying to make it work at a lower ISP, but just want to give a quick overview of the basics just in case. So community eligibility allows high poverty schools and districts to offer breakfast and lunch at no cost to all students, while also eliminating the traditional school meal application for families. Any school district can use this option if at least one of its schools has 40% or more students certified for free meals without an application. School districts have a lot of flexibility in how they participate in community eligibility. They can have one school participate, a group of schools participate, or the entire district. All that matters is that the individual or combined identified student percentage is greater than 40%. Identified students are those directly certified for free schools without an school meals without an application, such as kids that are on SNAP, TANF, or in foster care, enrolled in Head Start, homeless, or migrant. These students are typically identified at the district level. Federal reimbursements for community eligibility schools are determined by a formula based on the percentage of identified students. The identified student percentage is multiplied by 1.6 to determine the percentage of meals reimbursed at the federal free rate, while the remaining percentage of the meals are reimbursed at the lower paid rate. We have more details about the formulas and the multipliers on our website, so definitely take a look at that if you need more information. So there are many benefits to why schools are opting into community eligibility. And we're really excited to see the numbers growing. We had over 30,000 schools nationwide adopt community eligibility this past school year, and think that that number will only continue to climb. And that's because there are so many different benefits to community eligibility. One, participating schools have access to free, nutritious, healthy meals without stigma. Oh, next slide, please. And parents no longer have to worry about refilling meal accounts and really reducing or eliminating the unpaid school meal debt issue altogether. It streamlines meal service operations. Schools no longer have to collect and verify school meal applications and can really just focus on feeding kids. It also facilitates the implementation of innovative delivery models that have traditionally been used to break down barriers to the school breakfast program and increase participation. I know many school districts that are planning to open as of now are thinking about utilizing these models to serve both breakfast and lunch when they reopen in the fall to avoid large numbers of students gathering in the cafeteria. So now that we've touched on some of the basics and some of the benefits, and I know that these are just a few of the many benefits, and I know Rob will probably speak to many of the benefits his district's seen, and we have more resources available on our website if interested, but really wanted to dive into thinking about how to make CEP work and the financial analysis that you need to do to see if it'll work for your district. So electing community eligibility at a lower ISP does require careful consideration, but it is absolutely doable. It's important to remember throughout this presentation that every school district is different, and you really should do the necessary calculations to determine if community eligibility is a financially viable option. For many eligible school districts, community eligibility is beneficial to student achievement and health, as well as the school nutrition's bottom line, even at ISPs of 48%. So let's talk about steps. The first step in determining how this might play out financially in your district is to complete a financial analysis that should determine if meals can be provided at no charge to all students. Effectively approaching this task requires school nutrition directors to forecast anticipated reimbursement based on the level of poverty in the school or schools, current participation rates, projected increases in student participation, and any potential cost savings. School nutrition directors you can evaluate expected revenues by running multiple different financial scenarios for both school breakfast and lunch based on previous year's free and reduced price percentages to see what reimbursements would have looked like and what they could look like under community eligibility. School districts should calculate the revenue expected if participation were to remain on trend, as well as if it were to increase. With a lower ISP, it's also important when comparing revenue under traditional claiming processes versus through community eligibility to make sure to calculate the money generated from those students in the paid category and the impact of this loss under community eligibility, since all students will be eating for free. Another big thing to note is that schools implementing community eligibility have been able to derive savings from costs associated with school meal applications. This includes staff time dedicated to collecting, processing, and verifying school meal applications, as well as mailing and printing costs. It also includes staff time that can be used to collect school meal debts. Schools can benefit from economies of scale from increased breakfast and lunch participation through CEP. Your school nutrition department should consider any outside factors that also may have an effect on the program as well. While not usually the case, some districts do need to factor in additional costs, potentially equipment upgrades or changes to labor contracts. Other school districts, however, have found ways to reallocate staff time to accommodate increases in participation, just through some innovative thinking and brainstorming of how we do things a little bit different. Some are also able to recognize savings and use generated revenue from increased student participation to cover additional costs of new equipment or staffing changes. And at FRAC, we've developed quite a few tools and calculators to really help you crunch the numbers, to have those conversations with your school business administrators as well as other school district officials about making the change to CEP. Next slide, please. So one of these tools is our new grouping tool, and we're really excited that we have this available this year. This is a new tool to help school districts maximize the federal funding under community eligibility. So this tool is designed to provide strategic groupings for schools in your district, help you plan for adoption. Next slide. If you visit our website at fraccep.org, you download the template and add in your numbers and start crunching the data. You can tailor the calculator to show groups with a minimum ISP of whatever you're comfortable with, and it will provide many grouping options, as you can see here. So through the various samples, you have this might not be the best screenshot because average ISP of 1, you don't want that, but you can definitely pull different ones of looking at there will be different runs with different average ISPs, how many schools, et cetera. So take a look. There, like I said before, there are many options for how school districts adopt community eligibility, and I urge you to compare the multiple scenarios using this calculator. Just because a district can't adopt district-wide, it also doesn't mean you can't adopt in one or a group of schools in the district. We know a number of school districts nationwide have done a great job partially implementing CEP, and it's all about great communication to families. We also have a number of other financial tools available on fraccep.org to help school districts figure out the finances with CEP adoption, including a CEP break-even calculator, a district calculator, as well as a school level calculator. Our CEP break-even calculator will provide you with an overview of participation rates required to break even on an average daily basis, and you can use this for the entire district, single schools, or group of schools. You will need the district's average daily attendance, your ISP, your current reimbursement rate, and we'll update the reimbursement rate as soon as it's available on USDA, by USDA, but also thinking about your expenses, whether that be food or materials, as well as your current hourly labor rate. So all that info is included in the instructions here, and you can adjust it to fit your needs. And these are all three of these are different worksheets, and definitely encourage you to look those over and see the financial considerations of thinking about it. And I would also make a plug for the school level calculator. This is something that you can do at the school level, but you can also put schools together in groupings and crunch the numbers. But if you can also put in the information for your non-CEP schools, so you can look at the whole financial picture. I realize that next slide. Showing some of these resources right here, it's kind of hard to go through the worksheets, but we do have a step-by-step instructions with each of the worksheets. And please let us know, once you do have your numbers and you are working, if you do need technical assistance, we are happy to help you work through these sheets to see if CEP is a reality. And like I said, these have last year's reimbursement rates, but once we do get new rates from USDA, we will update probably the same day. So please take a look there. So once you've conducted your financial analysis, it's important to think about other best practices and strategies that are proven to boost participation and help your school nutrition finances. We have been talking with school nutrition directors across the country and have identified some common strategies to help increase participation in school meals and help the district's nutrition budget. Next slide. So I'll just dive right into the 6 strategies here. Great. So during our conversations, first and foremost, we heard about innovative delivery models, implementing breakfast after the bell models that move breakfast out of the cafeteria and into the classroom and making it more accessible and part of the regular school day has proven to be the most successful strategy for increasing breakfast participation. And there are many different options on how to do that: breakfast in the classroom, grab and go, and second chance breakfast. I know many school districts are thinking about classroom meal service next school year, and community eligibility would help with this implementation, streamlining the process as well as helping families. FRAC and the Partners for Breakfast in the Classroom have developed a ton of resources available on the implementation of these programs. So definitely take a look at our website for training and engagement tools for educators, and then assessment tools, thinking about restructuring your operations as well as best practices. And now I want to turn it over to Clarissa to highlight our second strategy, offering after-school meals.
Great, thanks, Etienne. So we wanted to highlight this because after-school meal program is really a great opportunity to support CEP, like Etienne mentioned. It can help school districts draw down even more reimbursement with really few added logistics. So this is a relatively new program. It was created in 2010 with the passing of the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act, and it does allow schools to provide a supper and a snack after school, and there are many benefits to it. So the first one that I wanted to flag is that USDA has streamlined this process for schools to serve after-school meals. So it is a separate program. It is underneath the Child and Adult Care Food Program, but USDA just recognizing the experience that schools have streamlined that process so it's easier to submit an application. The next thing that I wanted to flag, and I think is really important to mention, is that it does have a high reimbursement rate. So with the cash in lieu of commodities, it's higher than lunch. And the great thing about this program is that every meal is reimbursed at the free rate if you're area eligible. The other thing I wanted to flag for this that we see as a benefit for schools who may not already be participating is that they can actually wrap it into current operations and prep during the day and then have the after-school program staff pick it up and serve. So it doesn't have as much staffing as you might think. The other thing that I wanted to flag is that there is a requirement that an activity or some kind of enrichment component is included in order to serve meals. So there is some flexibility here. As long as there is a program or activity available for students to participate in, you can actually serve every kid after school, even if they aren't in that activity. So there is, again, some flexibility there. So really quickly, just a couple strategies that I wanted to highlight. So the big one would be for schools that are doing snacks through NSLP to transition over to CFP. Like I mentioned, there is both the supper and the snack component, so it just really amplifies that reimbursement that you can get. We have seen that many schools, as they're starting out, like to pilot what we call a super snack. So it's still meeting that CACFP after school meal pattern, but it's made of snack-like items. So for example, a milk, fruit, carrots, peanut butter, and crackers would meet the reimbursement for the meal pattern requirements, and it's easy for cafeteria staff to put together, and you do get that high reimbursement. The other thing is there's flexibility in when the meals can be served after school, so it can really adapt to what the school needs. And we've seen a lot of schools that are also serving meals in the classroom, which again is fitting considering how we know this upcoming school year will look. So if you are on the fence about after school meals and you are doing NSLP snacks already, or you have been in the past, now is really a great time to think about transitioning over to CACFP, getting that application approved, and serving suppers and snacks during the upcoming school year to support your CEP.
Great, thank you, Clarissa. A few other strategies that to help think about operating CEP at a lower ISP is to track your daily meal participation, to learn student preferences. This allows districts to identify unpopular items and to avoid menu fatigue, giving districts the ability to adjust menus quickly to ensure strong participation. I know many districts are thinking about a shorter menu cycle for next school year, so make sure you know what kids like. And also, you can always just switch up one or two items every so often to encourage participation. It doesn't necessarily need to be a revamp of the whole menu. Next slide, please. Another way to make CEP work is to make sure to engage and involve your students in the process. You can do this through student taste tests, surveys about meals, and even leadership opportunities. I know one district is trying to get older kids involved from home this summer and convening a working group on menu items for the coming school year as a way to get them excited while at home. Next slide. Another strategy is to provide appealing and high quality meals. I know many of you already do this, but it is definitely, you might have to get more creative this year, but the same goes as usual. Students like options that reflect students' cultural tastes, also thinking about incorporating locally sourced products as well. And finally, it's really important to market and promote your programs, whether it's letting parents know through robocalls or letters about your plans for next year, placing banners around the school, outside the school around your community to let them know that all kids will eat free each school day. And definitely getting vocal on social media. And also just want to flag, you know, the non-congregate waivers provide an opportunity to serve meals to students who may be schooling remotely, part or all of the time. Consider utilizing bus routes, giving students who come to school only part of the week meals for the other days. And of course, you know, with all of these plans, definitely check in with your state agencies, thinking about how to feed your distant learners, but there are definitely strategies that can make it work, you know, whatever your model might be. So now I will turn it over to Rob to share his experience with community eligibility.
Hey, thank you, Etienne, and I want to thank FRAC for having me on this presentation. I can start by saying that, yes, I'm in New Bedford right now, New Bedford, Mass. I'm actually the Director of Food and Nutrition Services, just got promoted this past year, my first year. And before I was in Wareham. In New Bedford, there's over 30 sites that we have meals at, 14,000 students. So it's pretty large. The school that I was at before I came to New Bedford, I was in Wareham, and it had 4 schools with 2,400 students. Both districts are CEP. So for this, not this year, last year, we ended with a fund balance, positive fund balance of $1.2 million in New Bedford. And before I left Wareham, I was there for about 3 years. We had a positive fund balance of $330,000 doing CEP. So I can tell you that I didn't just decide when I got the job in Wareham as a director that I was going to do CEP because I was at 45%. What happened was the district actually was thought that they were a lot higher, somewhere in the 50s. And when after they had an audit, as I got there, it was determined that it was more like 45%. So what happened was the superintendent had already advertised to the whole district that we were giving out free meals, and so we couldn't really go back. So I was stuck at trying to figure it out at that percentage and that rate, which is much smaller, in terms of the reimbursement rate you're going to get. It was somewhere around $2.50 is what the average was we're going to get per meal. So it was critical to look at all the aspects of the program, right? So I was in the restaurant business for 25 years before I jumped over to the school side. I know food cost, I know labor cost, I know menus, all the stuff that's similar to what we do in the schools. So we had to figure out what participation was, how it would increase, and all the different programs that we could do that were shown in this presentation. Now, the breakfast program is a huge program. It's a big moneymaker if you can do it correctly. So, but it's not that hard. It doesn't require you to hire a lot more staff. At least in my situation, in both districts, I had staff that came in the morning and they would prepare for the meal for the day, and they also put together the bags for breakfast to go to the classroom. So we did breakfast in the classroom. It was really easy for them to do that after there was some apprehension to start off with it, because they like they all say is it's more work, I don't have enough time. But to alleviate some of that, I did hire a few part-time substitutes to come up with help to address the increased participation for definitely breakfast. Because if most of your programs right now you're not in CEP, you probably don't offer a breakfast program. If you do, it's very small, and a lot of the students that are free or reduced participate. So it's not a real big moneymaker. But when you go CEP and you do breakfast in the classroom, or you have those kiosks where, grab and go or second chance, your participation goes way up, like at least to 60, 70%, and sometimes higher. And so that's, if you can keep that cost down for your meal at breakfast to about $1 or less, and your labor is pretty constant, your participation is going to go up, and you're going to create a lot of revenue. So that's where a lot of the program, you get some revenue from that's not a big additive to what you need to do. We also found that, that a la carte sales, right? So a la carte sales for most of the districts that aren't CEP is key. You need that revenue to break even or make money. I didn't lose a lot of a la carte sales in the district, and actually in both districts, when we went CEP. We still found that students wanted to buy things, especially on days like pizza day. I would sell a slice of pizza, they got one for free, and they'd buy another one for $1 or $1.50. We made a lot of revenue on those days. So there's still potential to increase to keep that a la carte revenue up. Another part of looking at it, there's a lot of great tools that FRAC offers to look at your program to see where you stand. Profit and loss statement is a key document that you want to use and look at it every month to see where your expenses are, where your revenue is, how you can make adjustments to things. There's costs associated with equipment and fixing things, but you want to make sure that you're looking at meals per labor hour. Where's your school at? How many staff do you have, and how many meals are they producing on an hourly basis? That can give you an idea of maybe you can redistribute labor in different areas to help with the increased participation. It doesn't necessarily mean that because your participation goes from 50% to 70% that you got to hire all these people. It just means that you're putting more chicken patties on a tray and cooking more. So I didn't find that in either district that we needed to add all these extra people because we went from 50 or 60% participation to 70, 80, or even in some cases for breakfast 90%. So there's misnomers about that. The other great thing is that you don't have to worry about unpaid meal charges. It goes from whatever the case was in Wareham. I think we had $60,000 in unpaid meal charges over a few years. That was erased and went down to zero. There's no more unpaid meal charges. There's no need for students to put things on account, and we don't allow them to do that for a la carte or anything else. They get a free meal, and there's no more unpaid meal charges. So that worked out really well. You want to keep track of your list every month that you do your uploads to the gateway or whatever system you use in your state. You want to make sure you're actively checking to see if there are any more students that qualify for a directly certified. That increases your percentage. So from year one, when I was in Wareham at 45%, at year two, I actually got it up to 52, 53%. So I increased that percentage and I got more money back. And then I was able to add, additional years on. I redid it and I was up for 4 years. And every year I kept looking at that number to either add a year or to see, how much it changed. So especially now, you're going to find that whatever number that you're looking at and however often you're doing those uploads, do them monthly. If you want to do them weekly, you can, but I did them monthly. You're going to see that number is going to increase. There are going to be a lot of people who will still be, unfortunately, out of work, and so your number should increase based on where you're at. Let's see here. So keeping that list current and active and making sure that you're checking all that stuff on a monthly basis. A lot of the other things that we did is, you have offer versus serve. That creates, not having to unitize a meal and give it out to every student and losing money because they're throwing things away. So if you adapt that model of offer versus serve, that helps with costs. You only have to have 3 items opposed to giving all 5. For breakfast, it's the same thing. It's 3 out of 4. And so if you combine a grain and have a 2 grain, that's 1 item, 2 items. It counts as one part of that 4 items, so you don't have to have 4. So that helps with costs. If you get entitlement dollars, you have to really look at utilizing entitlement dollars to make sure that you're utilizing all that money that they give you for food that you don't have to buy. Join a collaborative. That's another thing. That's great. You get better pricing if you join a collaborative, if you have that ability in your district. But, I don't want to take up all the time here in terms of stuff. But if you do have any questions or want to get some more information on how I did it and how I continue to do it based at those, those lower ISP rates, then definitely reach out to me or to FRAC and I can help you through some of the questions.
Thank you, Rob. That was really helpful and really informative. Some great tips, and really appreciate all the insight you shared. I do have a question for you. How have your district's financials compared after implementing CP to compared to before implementation? Are they better?
Absolutely. So, it's just a case of having the faith that your participation is going to go up. Once you start doing it, and I actually did, we had a lot of teachers who were opposed to doing breakfast in the classroom. They don't want to be the waitress or it's a mess. But so what I did is I did a pilot at one of the schools, and I got a hold of the teachers who were really excited about the program and did it for like 4 weeks. And then after we did the pilot, I had the teachers come back and I had them talk about with the teachers that did it, what were the pros, what were the cons, and they all decided to do it. And then once I did it in that whole school, next year, the other school said, well, how come we're not doing it? And we did it there. So, it turns into this snowball effect where people believe in it. You make money. I don't know of any CEP district that I've ever talked to that lost money doing CEP, even at a lower rate. We have a few districts I talked to this year that just adopted it before the COVID thing happened, and they eliminated their unpaid meal charges, and they were making money. They were having a positive cash balance by doing it.
Great. That's wonderful to hear. Another question for you. So with increased participation, my paid student participation will increase. How will that help me financially when the reimbursement rate is for paid isn't that much?
Well, you're going to get a paid reimbursement rate that's going to be a little bit less than the full rate, but your participation is going to go up. That's where the difference is. If you're making money and you're not CEP and you don't feel the need to, I don't know how else to explain to you, but I think the participation is going to go up. I think you're going to find that you're going to make money, especially by adding those programs like breakfast, after school snack, supper programs. I do all those programs, and that adds more revenue, and it doesn't cost a lot of labor, or even the items that you're using is not that expensive for the reimbursement that you're getting back for those programs. So,
great, thank you. Lots of questions for Rob, which this is wonderful. He is the expert, as you said, going to multiple districts and making this work. Did you get any pushback from administrators on doing community eligibility? Any tips for working with my superintendent and school board on getting this through this year?
Absolutely. I mean, I know FRAC, you have a lot of great tools and some things that you can use, talking points to go in there. But what really worked for me in the district with one of the schools that was opposed to breakfast in the classroom or doing it was doing a pilot and just doing it as a trial period for 4 weeks or so. And you have to find the teachers that really want to do it. And I had a bunch of them that did. And so I worked a pilot with them. We ran the program for 4 weeks. And then, like I said, I brought them all back in and I had them talk about it. It didn't come from me. I had them discuss, what those teachers found with the program, how the kids were reacting, the fact that they had another meal before lunch. It was free. So it just takes a little more buy-in, once you do those type of things.
Right. No, yeah, we do. That's wonderful. And I definitely think it's all about, sharing the benefits. Like Rob said, we have a lot of resources available, finding those champions, having them discuss. Also, we have found it helpful that, to talk to other administrators from CEP districts about what benefits they've seen, as well as with breakfast, but really engaging and seeing, what are their, where do they have, thinking about, where do they have concerns and addressing those. But we do have a lot of resources available on our website. We do have a piece actually thinking about CEP between 40 and 60, utilizing our financial calculators, as well as stakeholder engagement. So we are happy to share those in the follow-up email to this webinar.
And I'm sure at the end, there's got to be districts, within your districts that are thinking about that are doing CEP that would love to come and share their experience. Because if it's more, close to home from other districts that are doing it, you'll get some help there too.
Yes, definitely. Please reach out to us. We are happy to connect you with another district in your state, potentially similar size, enrollment. And yes, I think everybody that does CEP is always happy to talk about the many benefits, and Rob has been a great champion to help us do that. But, there are so many benefits and really want to see so many more school districts implement this year. So it doesn't look like there are any more questions, but, we do have a lot of resources on our website. We have our community eligibility webpage. We have a piece on taking a fresh look at community eligibility, thinking about, there is a unique opportunity this year with community eligibility, and so looking at ISPs. Also, the community eligibility, making it work with lower ISPs, and our grouping and financial tools. And if you need help connecting with somebody in your state that's operated CEP and has questions, and you want to get an operator and administrator perspective, we are happy to help there. So please take a look at these tools. If you do have questions with the grouping tool or financial calculators, we're happy to help there too. You do have to create an account with the grouping tool, but everything will save. And we really hope that your school district will adopt CEP for the next year, and we'll definitely keep you posted on the waivers that Clarissa mentioned, and just want to thank you all for the tremendous work you've been doing over the past few months. You all, you basically created new programs overnight. Everything's changing, I would say, on a daily basis for the coming school year, and so we really appreciate your dedication to ensuring children get fed. So thank you all for joining us, and thanks to Rob for taking the time to speak with all of us today and share Wareham and New Bedford's experience with community eligibility. And hope you tune in again for our next webinar next Thursday. Thanks, everyone.